Welcome to the RCM Ladder. We dive into career development and growth for revenue cycle professionals, helping you level up your career one episode at a time. This episode of the RCM Ladder is brought to you by our good friends at the Health Exchange. They are building an awesome community of revenue cycle professionals with the knowledge, insights, and resources needed to navigate the ever-changing landscape of healthcare reimbursement. The team at the Health Exchange have awesome content and events tackling everything from denials management to revenue integrity, patient access, and the importance of leveraging RPA or AI in your operations. The content is so useful, so smart, so impressive, so collaborative. Honestly, it makes us jealous. So go check them out now, right now, and then come back to us. You can find them at healthexchange.io. That's HEALTHXCHANGE.io. And now on to this week's discussion. Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of the RCM Ladder. I'm your host, James Furbush. My guest this week is the one and only Connie Lee. She is the Senior Director of Patient Access for UCLA Health. Connie, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when we were previously talking, you made an interesting point. You said that patient access is not actually within the revenue cycle umbrella at UCLA Health. I'd love to start there. Typically, patient access is under that umbrella at most organizations. Are your roles and responsibilities at UCLA Health different as a result of that? Talk to us about what you are up to, what your responsibilities are in your role and at your organization.
At UCLA Health, they've separated the financial clearance unit into a completely different team that helps navigate that process. My team oversees the registration and scheduling at the same time for our patients. Our core call center operations manage that across multiple areas, specialties, and departments. The Access organization also tackles enterprise standards for template management. We're embarking on a journey for centralization of our referral process. And so many other things that we are still in the early stages of building as support services and infrastructure for the enterprise to expand our access for our patients. And so designed a little bit differently, and I think a little bit more closely aligned to the clinical operations side, if you will. But my appreciation and experience in the ambulatory revenue cycle world is always top of mind as I look across some of our workflows and processes. You know, we do need to look at it holistically because it does impact the patient.
Yeah, and you mentioned the centralization of the referral process. One of your big endeavors was centralizing patient access into a more centralized service. You wrote a paper about it, is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. It's something I think actively we want to stay current in industry. I think every institution has a different model. And so exploring what different models are, I think culturally, you always have to be sensitive to, I think, the challenges there within every organization. What works in one organization doesn't quite work in another. I believe that was work that we had done in a previous organization evaluating it. And so I am trying to bring elements into my previous experiences into UCLA Health and seeing what sticks for the long term in terms of providing improved patient access.
Yeah, that's great. And so for you in your career, you've been at UCLA for a few years now. You've had a few different roles. You started as a consultant. You've also had experience working at the VA. I'd love to hear about your journey and how sort of some of these roles that you've had, you know, how has that set you up for success in your current role?
Yeah, the no plan has certainly worked in my favor to the extent that I came into healthcare administration because of a mentor in grads previously. I thought I was going to be more in the policy sector, impacting policy changes. I had aspirations to do all of that, but met a mentor who introduced me to what an administrative fellowship program could look like. And so that's how I started my career within the VA as an administrative fellow. I think that opportunity just opened many doors for me in terms of broadening my perspective. I think having no expectations, you always go into situations where they exceed your expectations in terms of your experience. And so fell in love with the impact I could have for patients and providers that we supported as administrators. And so the rest is kind of history from there. I've approached everything from a learning perspective, falling into the revenue cycle space. I mean, that really did happen probably 6 years ago. Yeah. So not even that long, but like firmly in the revenue cycle place. That also was happen chance because one of my previous leaders had left the organization. So they did a reshuffle at that time. And that's when I reported directly to the CFO, the first time in my professional history. And I learned an incredible amount from him and now see so clearly how closely, from a revenue cycle perspective, we need to carve out experiences where people understand the operations, the clinical operations, how scheduling is done, and how all of that happens from the front end. And then what happens in the back end to enable that patient to go full cycle in getting the care that they need. The ambulatory revenue cycle approach holistically is something I really want to continue to build a stronger infrastructure for across UCLA Health.
I've got so many follow-up questions because that's a lot to unpack. You said a lot of really interesting and good things there. I want to start though, the importance of strong mentorship. We have not really talked about that yet on this show. For you though, it sounds like having a very strong, like really kind of changed the course of your professional career. Can you talk a little bit about that, about the importance of mentorship and what that experience, when you kind of look back on it, are you still in touch with them? I'm just so curious about that.
Of course, for the most part, those who have truly guided and directed me through the years, those pivotal moments, I am 100% in touch with them. I've gotten better towards the last decade of life than I was initially. I think that when you graduate from school, the youth, the ignorance of really understanding the relationship building and networking and wanting to maintain those relationships, I wasn't as good about that early in my career. I started the fellowship and both my designated mentor and preceptor left within that first year of my fellowship. And so I think I learned from that time. I'm still in touch with my preceptor and mentor, but the lesson learned there is there's others that even though they don't align to you by reporting structure or within the confines of that program, are your advocate. Finding those advocates in the system who will look out for you, that really opened up a whole plethora of opportunities for me to continue to grow. I found at least one person in every organization who has played that role, formal reporting structure or not. I think that has allowed me to grow in my career and offer me opportunities, maybe more expeditiously than some of my other classmates. I'm really fortunate to have had that experience.
Do you have any tips for how to find, because they have made such a difference in my career. And sometimes like, I'm not good. I sort of just, you're like, oh, I just stumbled into these people that are like mentors for me. Do you have any tips or recommendations, advice for, because they do make a huge difference, but for other people out there who are maybe like, how do I get a mentor? How do I get someone like of that relationship?
Of course, luck of the draw, James. Now,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
that there are things certainly that you can do where the young Connie is much braver, I feel, in many sense, because I was in learning mode. All the cards were out there on the table. I didn't know anything. So I was quick and keen to reach out to people, let them know who I am, what I was interested in. They would connect me with other people. And that's how I brought in my network. I feel like in the, as I kind of moved through my career, I was seeing that less and less from my team members. I think that depending on where you are in your professional journey, sometimes there are barriers or things that have happened to you in the past that prevent you from that openness and that naiveness, even, right, of letting yourself develop those relationships. That's a huge barrier for those who want to advance in the organization because they're so caught up in names, titles, or maybe again, where they are in the career. And so having had the privilege to start really at the very bottom of an organization, like a fresh grad or a student level, and then being able to really want to learn and contribute to different leaders across the organization. I never really had to sit down and tell someone, you are my mentor, or can you be my mentor? It was just a conversation where we had like interests. And
yeah.
then I would help them on projects or whatever. It was very organic. And that's generally how I formed my relationship.
Yeah, that's so great. I mean, it is such a huge difference maker just professionally because those relationships, especially when you maintain them over time, get richer and deeper. I've had this interesting thing where you've had a couple mentors and then all of a sudden they're reaching out to you for your advice. You're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
am I now the mentor, like helping it's a very rewarding when you have that. And so I would highly recommend to anyone in the professional space to make that happen if you can. Flip side of that, Connie, have you been in a place now where you are the mentor for other young professionals? Has that sort of happened for you at all? Or?
Yes, I have had a number of interns and fellows through some of the professional organizations I'm a part of, formal mentoring infrastructure where they connect you with someone. But I think across the board, none of the people that I currently feel like I mentor would call, they call me their mentors. And so that always surprises me because it's just that paying it forward. I see someone that has a certain interest in an area or I see them shine in a certain way. I remember that and I want to look out for them and help them with their growth. I'm very committed to that. Really, at the end of my career, if I look back, I will feel most accomplished if I'm able to allow the leaders who have been under me to shine in their special way. So, yeah.
That's the pull quote right there. But it's a good one, right? Thinking about the totality of a career. I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, I got to be the C-suite by a certain age and all that. But at least for me, I think so much of my career, it's just like these relationships with people that I've made. And yeah, you want to see people succeed. It's like when you're a people manager, just give me 2 years, let me do as much as I can for you. And when you're ready to fly the nest, I will help you where you want to go. And that I feel like is just such a much more lasting impact than artificial titles and things like that. I love that so much. I just feel like this conversation went a total left-hand turn where it was supposed to be going. But so I'm curious for you then, is there anything that's sort of surprising so far? You started out wanting to sort of do this policy thing. You found a good mentor. You sort of switched gears to healthcare administration. And I'm curious, has there been anything surprising to you about that career pivot?
Yeah, several times during the first decade of my career, I would question, right? I had a bout with consulting. I moved in and out of a variety of different roles, trying to tap into what I initially went to school for, wanting to make policy changes and then being driven by operations, which I completely love, and how to find that right balance. Looking back at all the different experiences I've had, it all makes sense. Everything happens for a reason because I wouldn't be the leader with the experiences I've had without all of the different jobs I've had. Like everything somehow connects. I think trusting the process that you aren't going to graduate and then go straight into a C-suite position, having the no plan, which I really always think I've had. I just knew that my heart was committed into healthcare and wanting to make a difference. And that has always been my driving guide, my North Star. It's really served me well. You just have to figure out what it is that motivates you and everything else sort of falls in place. Now I have the right balance in my leadership role to affect policy changes that improves that patient's experience and improves access. And I get the operations taste every day. And it's wonderful to see it all come together. I live and breathe and drink the Access Kool-Aid. And I think just trying to explain that to others and those that I am currently mentoring to understand that 20 years ago, patient access wasn't even really a thing. It was just starting to come to light where I know at the VA, there was an incredible amount of work with wait times and looking at that and how to process patients through. And then now 20 years later, it's like, oh my gosh, right? Everyone has these access organizations in different types of infrastructures and oversight areas. And I think it's fascinating. It's so fun to be in this world, in this space.
I love this so much. I'm curious for you then, looking at the landscape of patient access, seeing where it was 20 years ago, now you're in it. Do you have a vision for where you see patient access heading as a function within the healthcare system?
Definitely, we are a force to be reckoned with, right? We are not the enemy. We are 100% collaborative, which I think UCLA Health does very well. That's how I landed here and was inspired by that collaboration and partnership between clinics and this ambulatory revenue cycle space. There has to be that partnership because you have to be committed as an organization to improving that patient's experience. And if that grounds you in all of your efforts, the way you collect on your unpaid bills impacts that patient's experience, the touch points to obtain an authorization and then reschedule patients, that entire experience. If we're all committed to a unified alignment and what the ideal patient's journey should look like for an enterprise, I think that's how you're really going to make some headway in that space. And having myself or any access leader at that table in those discussions to help implement and inform those policy decisions and changes that the enterprise has to make to support that alignment in the patient's journey from start to finish. That's where the magic happens. I hope and trust that across the nation, everyone's embracing this as much as I see it here with my current organization, because that's where I think that we'll really be able to make a difference.
Well, and it's so important too, because, and this is not to slight the clinical experience, because obviously that is deeply important. But if a patient can't even get in, if a patient is waiting on the phone to make an appointment and it's like they can't even schedule, or if it's like the access really is it's like the first step. Yeah. And it's like a very important, because first impressions sometimes do matter, especially in healthcare, where that sort of hasn't always been such a great experience for a lot of patients. Waiting on the phone, scheduling, getting in, waiting in the waiting room.
It's so important. It's incredibly important. I think the attention that any institution who has an access organization, it just really makes me happy, because healthcare call centers, if you will, weren't even really a thing going back in time. Seeing the growth and, healthcare call centers are also different. You can't pick a executive in a call center for Neiman Marcus or Amazon or whatever and apply that to healthcare. There are nuances that have to be considered. It's a special time to reimagine from a call center perspective. Within my current oversight area, we are looking at expanding scheduling modalities in different ways, like through web chats or web forms and self-scheduling tools. There's so many different things out there, and like a Domino's tracker for new patients to follow through, right? We're looking at creative, innovative solutions to advance our approach to offering access to patients. So it's pretty cool. I think it's a fun space to be in.
It's kind of exciting because there are a lot of changes in technology that are happening. I mean, just the ones that you rattled off, where it's like chat, direct scheduling, all these different things. It does feel like a lot of those consumer tools we've taken for granted have started to infiltrate. Do you have a process for how you evaluate what's helpful versus what is not, as it relates to some of these big technological changes?
Yeah, we are currently putting together a balanced scorecard approach. And the organizations that I've been in, it's been a very IT-led initiative that doesn't quite operational needs, operations-led initiative that doesn't meet IT security requirements. We are still in our infancy of building this infrastructure across my current organization. We are looking at a balanced scorecard approach, level of effort, cost, strategic initiatives, how it meets those objectives. All of that is going to be considered for any IT solutioning we do. What weighs really heavily on that balanced scorecard approach is that patient's experience. I mean, all of us do have varied experiences in other areas of our life, right? Nail appointments, hair salon appointments, open table approach to how we're able to get our reservations. Yeah. Why can't we bring that to healthcare? I don't see any reason why we can't reimagine that approach and experience.
That's awesome. We'll have to have you come back on to follow this journey, because that's a fascinating aspect. This is a big work stream to bring some of those changes and not get sucked into like tools that might not do the job and figuring out what patients need. I'm fascinated by that process, like behind the scenes of how that happens. I'm curious then, for you, you're in the midst of your career, you've gotten to this place, you're obviously very passionate about what you do in the access team at UCLA Health. Do you have a vision for where you're thinking? I know you have the no plan that you've mentioned a couple of times, but I'm curious, do you think about ultimately that destination of where you want to end up? I mean, are you happy just staying in patient access, what do you sort of think about as you think about that next horizon for your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. My mentor would love that you just asked me that. Probably my husband and parents as well.
Oh God,
I guess
I
I
feel like
see
I
it.
touched a nerve.
That's a loaded question. It's something that I actively think about. At this point in my career, it's about am I satisfied with, am
Yeah.
I challenged? Am I feeling satisfied? Do I feel like I'm contributing? In my current role, I've only been with my organization for not even 2 years. It'll be 2 years next week. So it's wonderful. I've been promoted in my short time, and that was also unexpected. You have to focus on what is at hand for you now. And I think that's just so incredibly important. I think with some of the younger generation, they're so focused on where they ultimately want to go. They miss the beauty in just being present and learning in their current situation here and now. I feel fully satisfied, more challenged than ever in my current role. I would really like to establish it as a force to be reckoned with across all of the other healthcare institutions. I know lots of other institutions have a more solid foundation and framework for their access organization because we've only been around for less than a handful of years in our current infrastructure that's truly looking at access from more than a call center perspective, but broadening the scope of our impact to the organization. So I think that's going to certainly take at least another decade or so to build out. I have a heavy vested interest in creating that infrastructure and inspiring other leaders to get into this space. When I feel like that infrastructure is there and they can carry on without me, then I will know that it is my time to move on. That is the mark that I want to leave in my current role and with the organization.
No, I think it's a really awesome answer because it really gets at the heart of what motivates you professionally, which is being challenged. I can speak from my own experience. I'm learning, I'm challenged. There's still a lot to do. Having that sense of like that sort of like almost process oriented in some ways is such a difference than being title driven for some people who might be. And so, no, I think that's like a great answer because it's like, it just goes to show like, you're approaching kind of that professional satisfaction of like, I want to do big things. This is going to be a very long process to do that. I'm not even thinking about the next thing until I can figure out this problem to solve, which is, I think, kind of a remarkable attitude to have. Not everyone has that, right? I think that's pretty remarkable. You mentioned, you guys at UCLA Health are not you guys, but your team at UCLA Health are kind of just starting out, really kind of putting this effort into place. Are there other organizations that do this well? I'm curious if there are some out there that you're like, oh, so-and-so does this really well.
I'm not going to name them because I don't want them to know I have favorites, but we are part
That's
of the
fair.
Patient Access Collaborative, which is a wonderful resource
Okay.
for anyone, to be involved with and just learning from different partners. Because people do things, they have specialty areas. They do things a little bit special in different ways. It's hard to choose just one that is doing this impeccably well because also the geographic differences and then some
Patient
nuances. I mean,
populations.
California
Yeah.
state has its own challenges that make it more challenging for us to implement certain things that other organizations have. But what I see resoundingly across the more successful institutions, certainly UCLA Health, is that leadership buy-in and engagements. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to have that. And there are organizations that do that better, that have that vision from all the way up top. And when you have that, it's just makes everything else, the collaboration across the different disciplines, so much easier and very enjoyable. Because I like to have fun. And I think that life is too short to not have fun. So at whatever level of leadership you're in, that impact you can make on your immediate team, or if you're an individual contributor, you can be a very impressive, incredible leader. Leadership is defined in so many different ways. And that's what I'm trying to bring to my team. I don't think they previously saw it that way. But I think anyone from the call center agent all the way up to the very top by title, you are your leader in your own way because you're impacting either the patient's experience directly or your team or those around you. And I think that's a really cool place to be.
That's a great, like, leadership is not defined by a title. How do you get the people on your teams to have that sort of mindset? Are there things that you do to encourage them to think like that? to
Oh,
take
no,
that
I certainly
ownership?
hope yeah. It's a cultural change that I am trying to affect, right now in my role. We have a suggestions box. If you have something similar to that, just an outlet, a forum for any individual, anonymously or identified, to be able to share their best ideas. Let's execute on it. I think I'm a bit more intentional with my leaders by title, asking them, right? Being able to have those more direct conversations in smaller forums to empower them to come up with the ideas. When I first started with the organization, there were some immediate adjustments I had to make to have those quick wins and demonstrate to them that there were things they could achieve that maybe they never previously were able to. And so having those quick wins under our belts gained confidence and then instilled some trust that I knew what I was doing across the team that had been so accustomed to a different type of leadership. And so now taking a step back as we head into a new fiscal year, challenging them that this is their team. How are you going to manage it? How are you going to lead your team to success? And then you let me know, knowing that this is where we want to go. These are the objectives we need to achieve. What can I do to help you? Like, this is your team again, right? Like, yes, this is our team collectively, but within your area, you need to feel good about what you're doing. And I think everyone has individual magic to how they're going to bring that to their team.
Oh, that's so great. I do think people generally, when you empower them, you have to let people surprise you in some ways. Probably all of us have worked in those organizations where you're waiting for someone to give you permission to do something, and it's sometimes not healthy. Whereas if you've been in that situation where a people manager, you figure it out, you tell me the strategy, here's what we're trying to do. You really do see, I think, people grow and take off, and it does create a much more healthy team environment when you take that approach, for sure.
Yeah.
Thinking about leadership and some of these other things, what are some of the skills that you have seen or you have working in patient access? Are there certain mindsets and skills that you look for or that you think would make someone more successful in working in the patient access and revenue cycle space?
I think with one of the things that I have found my more successful leaders to have than those who have struggled in this space is you can't be a glory hog, if you will, or someone who wants accolades all the time. That's just not going to happen in this space. It's a tough job. You have to demonstrate resilience, commitment to the mission, and just finding that intrinsic motivation to know that what you're doing does make an impact. If you don't see that up front, it's a struggle because we are always going to be that checks and balances to clinics, right? We're going to be the messenger of bad news, and you have to demonstrate a certain type of DNA to be in this. That is something I look at the more advanced levels of leadership, just to make sure that they have that commitment to it. Nothing else I can sprinkle on top if you don't have that realization or commitment to what we're doing here is going to help. No amount of Dodgers tickets I'm going to give you is going to help that if you just aren't committed to wanting to improve patient access and that experience. And so I will do what I can to bring those mission moments to the team and help them see that impact directly that they have. But that is one thing that, I mean, starting from the very bottom to the top, I think that's why with the team that I have that is committed, I'm so grateful every day because I see so clearly their contributions. And if I can help them see it more clearly, that's my job. Their first step into the door and why they want to join the organization. It's important for them to tap in.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's great. So resiliency, kind of inner motivation, tapping into the mission. That's a lot of really good stuff right there. Do you want to do the lightning round? We'll segue real quickly. Couple quick
Sure.
hitting questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Let's
Question 1. What is the most important metric you are tracking, measuring that gives you the most anxiety?
so many, but if I had to choose one, abandonment rate, because every abandoned call is a patient who has waited past their defined comfort level, and that's a missed patient that we don't even know what they wanted yet. That is something that we look at every day. When it bumps up, I do have anxiety that we are missing the opportunity to serve those patients.
For my education, I'm not supposed to ask follow-up questions, but I'm gonna break
Oh,
the rules because I'm the host. What is a good benchmark for abandonment? Obviously, 100%, is it, or 0%? I'm not really sure how that
0%.
would actually, but like you'd want that to be no abandoned calls. But I'm curious what that sort of benchmark, like a good one for people out there who are listening.
Correct. The last survey they did for the Patient Access Collaborative, it was 5%. So that is our goal as an organization, to hit below 5%.
Oh,
Yeah. The goal,
okay,
0, right? No one should be
0.
waiting,
Oh,
but
right.
yeah, it should be less than 5%.
100% abandonment would not be. That would not
No.
be. Number 2, what's the biggest goal you want your team to achieve this year?
We have a leadership development plan that we are implementing over this next year. The commitment for them to embrace that journey of developing themselves so they could be the best leaders possible for the teams they lead.
And finally, what's something you wish people would talk more about when it comes to patient access?
I think just how important it is to make sure that we are helping the patients from the start, right? We are the entry point. We are that experience. We are so impactful in that experience. If we can take it from that patient experience perspective as we look at access, because a patient is going to be okay and willing to wait 6 months for a specialty appointment if that is what he or she needs, as long as they feel engaged and connected to the institution. Disney does it very well for those ride queues where you're waiting in line for hours for a ride, but you're so committed. They make the experience fun, even in certain newer rides. I want to emulate that here. I think the Access organization can do that. We are in touch with the patients. We can develop an experience for them that, yeah, there's still that wait because of limited resources from the provider side in terms of availability, but what can we do to be a resource for them so that they have clarity and they know where to go if something should happen during the course of their wait, where they have questions, should questions come up, or any variety of things. And so I think that that's something that I really hope that people understand about patient access, that's not just about like going into the appointment and just like that, one and done deal, but it's this holistic approach from start to finish. And it's a continuum. It's not just that one episode of care, but how are we really going to take care of the patient?
What is your professional horsepower?
Oh, that is a great question. I think authenticity for myself. Just who I am at work is who I am outside. It's a really great approach to leading my team, and also self-fulfillment and satisfaction. I don't have to fake who I am. I mean, my passion and motivation, I think is just makes it easier, makes the job easier. It's almost like it's not a job. Some days that is the goal. I really enjoy and appreciate that. And I think my team appreciates that. I appreciate that in others as well. Life is just too short. Too many experiences over the past handful of years have shown us that you really have to be living your best life in the best way possible. And so whatever that means to you, you need to commit to that and do your best at that.
That's so great. All right. So finally, working with UCLA Health. People are out there listening. Can you talk about, are you have any open roles? Where can people go to learn more about working with the patient access team at UCLA Health?
Yeah. The careers website, UCLA Health Careers, all of our jobs are posted there. Yes, we do have openings at a variety of different levels that you can explore. If there are any questions, I'm probably listed as a point of contact for more of them than not, but I'm happy to redirect or help guide any individual who's interested in joining the organization.
Awesome. And Connie, for anyone who's out there listening, where can they find to learn more about you or connect with you?
LinkedIn is definitely the best way. I will certainly respond via LinkedIn.
All right. Well, Connie, thanks so much for taking the time for this conversation. I feel like I learned a lot. So thanks for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Jane.